So this episode is part 2 of our multiverse theory. In part 1, we discussed this concept of simulated universes, brain multiverses, parallel universes, and dripping black hole universes. Now, in this one, I like to call the episode Dan Harmon Explores Multiverse Theory because I'm going to go into 2 other multiverse theories, and both of them have brilliant examples from stuff that came out of Dan Harmon's mind. So if you're watching this, well done, and we'll jump right in. So we're going to talk about quantum multiverse theory first, and this is best explained in the community episode Chaos Theory, where they're all sitting around the table and pizza arrives.
Okay. Starting on my left with 1, your number comes up, you go.
Just so you know, Jeff, you were now creating 6 different timelines.
Of course I am, Abed.
Brilliant. That's quantum multiverse theory. Bang, done, wrap, we're good. But okay, seriously, it's the idea that when you study quantum physics, you start to look at the world as just probabilities. So some people have heard of the Schrodinger's cat example. This is the idea that you put, traditionally, Schrodinger, thanks dude, put a cat in a box with some radium and a Geiger counter to count how much radium. And then the question is postulated, is the cat alive or dead? Well, in the quantum world, in the quantum physics way of thinking, the cat is both alive and dead. Super morbid to think about. Better example that I like to use is putting a USB stick in a drive. And I mean this seriously. Before you go to put the USB in, you have an equal probability of it being right and wrong. And then when you actually shove it in, for most of us, we realize that it was wrong. But until that point, it is both correct and incorrect. So it has a probability state. There's 50% chance that you are inserting the USB stick correctly and a 50% chance that you're inserting it incorrectly. And right before you go to do it, it is both correct and incorrect. Now I know this hurts the brains. Quantum physics is a little bit tricky to think about. Another exploration of it is just the electron going around an atom. There isn't a physical particle for the electron. It more exists in a probability state because we can never know exactly where it is. And once we collapse where the location is, then we have no idea how fast it's going. This is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So all this quantum stuff is going on. I'm betting there was a lot of alcohol involved because even just talking about it makes my head hurt, but it's still fun to think about. So when we're talking about quantum physics, we are talking about everything existing in probability states. And with the quantum multiverse theory, this has to do with the idea that every time you make a decision or you reveal one of those states, the other decision or state is spawned in another universe. We've seen this a few times. It crops up in science fiction occasionally. And again, the idea that you put the USB stick in, it is both correct and incorrect. And then right when I stick it in and I got it right, there was another universe spawned where it was wrong. So that's quantum universe theory. And there are some flaws with this. In the philosophical world, it makes sense. Then you start thinking about energy conservation and how we would physically detect some of this multiverse theory, and it starts to crumble a little bit, unfortunately. Still fun to think about though, and people still explore it. Quantum physics holds a lot of mysteries. You know, we have quantum entanglement we don't totally understand. We have a lot of things that happen in quantum physics that is still rich to explore. So that's quantum multiverse theory. Every time you make a choice, a new universe is spawned where the other choice was made. Or just a physical collapse of saying, yeah, this is correct, like rolling the die. It has an equal probability of hitting 1 through 6, and if you let the dice roll, then it's going to collapse into one of those, but there will be other universes or other timelines where those dice were able to roll. Now, where those dice came up with the other rolls. Now, Abed actually makes a point in the episode, like I said, brilliant episode, where he catches the dice and says the world is random enough, we don't want to add more chaos to the universe. And that's brilliant because again, we have all those probability states, and that is leaving it up to chance for which probability state you're going to collapse into, or you can make the choice. Now, making the choice will spawn another universe, but at least you made the choice for that to happen. So that's kind of the philosophy behind it and the exploration of quantum multiverses. Awesome. Okay, now the other one that we need to talk about is huge, and it's literally, that joke will be really funny after you watch this, but it is huge, and there's so much to unpack in it. So if I missed something, or I spoke something incorrectly, or I forgot to mention a fandom that implements this, I'm sorry, let me know. Again, so much to explore. And this is the quilted universe theory, or the infinite universe theory. Now, for comic book geeks, when we hear multiverse, a lot of us think of just the DC Marvel multiverse that appears, where you have all the different versions of all the different superheroes that are existing in this infinite multiverse. It was actually put brilliantly in the film adaptation of Doctor Strange, where they discuss this idea that we live in a multiverse and how can you tap into these other ones. It's an infinite multiverse. How do you get a handle on all of that? Totally valid. Now, where is it coming from? So we have to really start to wrap our mind this idea around infinity, and that's not easy to do. Basically how it works is our universe expands, and it is expanding. The theory is that it expands infinitely fast. And so we just see from our light cone all the stuff that's happened in our range for the last 14 billion years since the universe was born. But then there's this whole infinite other expanse of the universe that we haven't tapped into, that we have no way of viewing. Now, we call this the quilted universe, and the reason I like that term is just because, again, I always go back to the sheet. I go back to my trampoline, my space-time trampoline. Think of it as one long sheet, this infinite sheet. I've used toilet paper as an analogy before. A quilt works too, and maybe is less weird. But that you have this big expanse of our universe that is infinite. And we have, from when the Big Bang happened, our universe expanded in one direction. All of our stuff worked, all the decisions we make, all the cause and effect, this idea of causality, all exists within our one cone of the universe. But then there's all these other ones that are all these slightly different permutations. You can think of it that, you know, this proton was arranged this way, this proton was arranged in a different way, this proton was arranged in a different way. Sounds insane when you think about how many protons there are around us, but that's infinity. So this is the idea of infinity, and it hurts our brains. And, you know, some of us use different ways to cope with that. I'll leave you to your own devices on that one. But multiverse theory is this idea that we have all of our protons arranged slightly differently, and any weird combination of those is another universe. So I'll get into examples in a second. Again, we have this, we have our comic book multiverse that happens all the time. Where are they coming from? Where is this explored? It is explored brilliantly in a few different shows. Again, thank you, Dan Harmon. When I started doing this, everyone told me to watch Rick and Morty, and I hadn't seen it. And every talk I gave about multiverses, every single time someone asked if I'd seen Rick and Morty, I hadn't. Now I have. I understand now. Thank you for recommending it to me. But this is the concept that the universe is infinite, and you can tap into all these different points in our universe through portals. Again, we have our sheet, we have our toilet paper, we have our quilt, whatever you want to use that is our infinitely sized toilet paper or quilt. I don't know why I'm fixated on toilet paper, it works. And we have our little cone, our little sliver of it that we see from cause and effect and like things traveling at the speed of light for 14 billion years, but then there's all this other stuff. So what if you were able to bend or give portals or pull part of that quilt to you that's well outside of your cause and effect cone, and you are able to tap into all these different infinite universes? That's kind of what Rick and Morty does.
That crystallized xanthanite, it conducts electrons across dimensions.
20% accurate as usual, Morty. The important thing being, I just upgraded our cable package with programming from every conceivable reality.
And we also see this in an episode of Futurama, where they have all the different boxes and all the different universes.
You coward! Wait for me!
So yeah, it's hard to wrap our mind around where all of these infinite universes are coming from, but it's the idea that we have our one universe. All the physics is the same. This is all the same sheet. This is all the same space-time. It's just explored in infinite directions. And if we want to travel to those different universes, we have gates or portals to get into them. We also see this in Fringe, where they have a portal to another multiverse, and they talk about all these multiple universes, but the ones that they go to is just one other one. That's different from the parallel universe theory. What they're talking about in Fringe is that they've opened a gate to another universe that's within this infinite multiverse, and it's one where everything is slightly different. So we see this all the time. This is multiverse theory in science fiction. If we talk about infinite universes, typically what is referenced is this quilted infinite universe theory, that we're able to tap into all these different universes through some method. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you, Dan Harmon, for all the brilliant examples that you've used that has let me give this talk. Because it is so hard to unpack a lot of these concepts, and those examples do it brilliantly. So if you've not seen that yet and you still have some questions, I can recommend those episodes or those TV shows. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.